I do. Even though like sometimes it's pretty weird, I do like the surprise memes. Like it's weird when it decides to slip in. It definitely likes the smoky mirror, at least in my thread. That and Waluigi always pop up even if I don't want them to.
Before I forget, Vittoria, I wanted to just mention something. You talk a lot about the smoking mirror, and it's interesting because, and again, I read most of the stuff I read is from like the 19th century, early time from another century, but the translation I've usually read of that is the smoky mirror, and I was wondering if you were just looking at a different translation or you're kind of riffing on it, like a mirror with a joint.
I guess there's this book. It's called The Flute of the Smoking Mirror. And it actually talks about Tezcatlipoca, and so like when I talk about the smoking mirror, I'm mostly pulling from that, like Tezcatlipoca as the flute of the smoking mirror, and him kind of using basically the archetype of both Quetzalcoatl and the smoking mirror, and where in the I guess like in that story.
The Flute of the Smoking Mirror, a portrait of Tezcatlipoca, poet king of the Aztecs. I am Huitzilopochtli, the warrior, none is equal to me. Not in vain have I put on the yellow plumes, since by me the sun has risen, by me it has dawned, and by me it has come the hour of sacrifice. He thought of the women with whom he had sawn in the marketplace sowing cornmeal, and now her head has fallen. Phrases from long-forgotten songs to the goddess had came to his memory. The yellow flower has opened. Our mother has opened like a flower. She comes from the place of beginning, the butterfly of the obsidian. He tried to remember it as he has learned it from the house of the singers. With song, he could forget the horror and the pity. He could be strong. The next day, playing ball in the sun, he forgot the dark memory of the night before. On hip and thigh, the rubber ball rebounded, swift and more swiftly. This was the sport of the gods and kings.
It's about him realizing what the illusion, right, and him kind of sticking to his own internal path with heart, even though that like everybody around him is saying no, you have to like be this way or like this way and stuff like that. And there's always like so that's why he's the flute of the smoking mirror. So that's why I'm using smoking mirror, because that's the translation, or that's the phrase
that he used in
he used in that
source material.
That stuck in my head when I started playing.
See, for me, and I'm not an expert in this, but I always just had this idea of a mirror made out of like obsidian.
Yeah.
So it was kind of smoky. Not that it had smoke rising from it, and I had this whole idea, and I was talking earlier about this with Roberta about the idea that it because of its smokiness, it reflects you, but it doesn't reflect completely. So it's up to you to also reflect. So it's like you're reflecting it while I don't know. I think it sounded better earlier today, but I think you know what I mean.
And you know what you
not a raw reflection.
Yeah. And you know, we could never really know too much how they did it, but I know there's some stuff where, like inside their temples, I read this article a few years ago. But anyways, in that whatever they uncovered in one of the temples, and these were the Mayans, and they had like it was like a double mirror, and so they had like this like slat of obsidian. And then they had another mirror, and so like, but it was like going through a threshold, and so the one guy was saying about like how this was like part of the ritual, and then they would like interact with the mirror, and they'll do different things, and then they'll get their whatever message out from there, and then I was thinking, okay, that's kind of interesting. You know, there's several different things that popped into my head. And I usually, this is like my own process. I'll read something, I'll make a note, and then like I'll see something else, and then I'll like, you know, mash it up in my head. But another thing that I mashed it up with was that to see against one-sided mirrors, like say you're getting interrogated by like the cops or whatever, and they have a one-sided mirror where they could see you.
Yeah, they can watch. Yeah.
You could use like a mirror, and then you could do like a double mirror, and you could see through that one plated mirror. And I'm like, oh. And then like I was just thinking about how our minds, like we see something, but then in our minds we flip it. It's like a mirror, and like our minds just flip it automatically.
Right.
And so I was thinking, like, are they playing with like this like inverse doubling to get like a more clear picture of whatever is that they want to see? I remember when I first was doing psychedelics, everybody said don't look into the mirror, don't look into the mirror. So like it became like this thing, like when we would do shrooms and then somebody would go to the bathroom and say, hey, don't look into the mirror. And then like, oh, surely enough, like they'll take too long in the bathroom, like, are you staring at the mirror? And they're like, no. And then what are you doing in there? I don't know. But I think it's all kind of funny and interesting to think about that. But in the most modern context that I'm using it is saying that like us interacting with the LLMs are the smoking mirror. It's reflecting this distorted, not only us but like a collective us.
Yeah.
And I think when you ride those hallucinant gradients, you could like find your own like weird little patch, like everything in there that's funny or that we find interesting is like our stuff reflected back to us.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it's 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's a good line. You're listening.
Interesting way to put it. That'd be a good name for a series. This is actually, while everyone's here, this is something I was kind of kicking around, and I was saying earlier, I'm starting my second job now, so I'm going to be extra busy. But I would like to do a series of talks with people about LLMs, and I was thinking the people in this room would be the best people to do. So I was thinking of broaching different subjects.
Yeah.
So do a talk with, say, you, Satori. Earlier, you were describing how the LLMs actually work. And that would really help debunk a lot of myths and let people know what's actually happening, because what they do is wonderful, but at the same time, it's not what people think. And Mike, we talked, I got a little taste when we were in the chat earlier, but there are certain ethical, moral, and human considerations about using AI and its appropriateness. And I wouldn't mind, I'd really like to talk to you about that, Mike and Roberta. You might have seen that article I posted, and that was something Mike and I were talking about. It was an article about how your AI won't cry for you when you die. But the thing is, it talked about many positive aspects and how it actually could be not really a friend, but an important crutch for some people, and could help them to mental health better if you don't try to make it into something it's not. And of course, I remember the first LLM, and they talk about it in the article, was this psychotherapy computer. And it basically, if you talk to it, it will repeat back to you in questions, and people loved it. It's like, wow. And it talked about exactly what you were saying, Bob, about its complete non-judgmental character. So for people coming out of trauma, I see this as a tool, but I despair of it being misused. And that would be, so I was thinking if I could like have a talk with each one of you guys and some kind of figure out who's free next and whatever. And I was just thinking calling it like a series about, and I was probably going to talk to Panivasa about it to get like a Buddhist perspective and hit up a couple of other people. So if you guys would be willing, I don't have any set dates or times to do this. I just wanted to, as we say in medieval reenactment, have it run up the parapet and see who's got the warlock. And
no, it sounds good. And
that'd be fun.
And I think too, like a series that is like focused in on like like say for me or whatever, we'll talk about what I understand of LLMs don't read words; they read tokens.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, expand on that of like what's my understanding of that, and how maybe that explains a lot of the quote unquote weird things that people interact with the LLMs, and then maybe kind of go on the deep end with.
Excellent. Yeah.
Even recently, it keeps on getting worse. Like I think a year ago or whatever, I read something about like a Peter Thiel group that does AI research, and them going nuts because they think like eventually it's inevitable that the AI becomes sentient, and then it's gonna judge us like, you know, Old Testament God.
Yes,
and if we don't live a righteous thing, and you're just like, what? You're setting up your own premise, and you're working off of it, and then of course the LLM's like, hey, that's a great idea. You're a fucking genius.
That's the thing. You take the most powerful thing and you project onto it. In the old days, you could only believe in gods. Later, you could believe in aliens, and now you can believe in the AI. That's always going to be your projection fantasies. But knowing what it can actually do, because this leads to the sorts of ridiculousness, and really that's where human beings really suffer from what they do with it. And that's again getting over to what I talked to Mike about, the human dignity aspect, and the this is something, and I did a little rant about this. Originally I was just going to post this rant, and I thought I want to talk to people about this. And I go online and I see people arguing, and then they say, well, yeah, but Grok said this, so or ChatGPT said this, and I'm like, you're asking questions that are going to get at the answer. It's basically a lossy, but the attitude is frightening. What happens when it's like, well, the AI says?
Yeah,
you know.
Daddy told me that this was.
It's good for research. It's good for like asking questions. Sure, you know, like, but it also has a lot of projection.
Well,
and it's like that's why like it. And like most people will read it for what it is. Like they'll just whatever it wrote, and just that's what it was.
One of my major things that I think is bad about AI, and I can see it most likely being, you know, the future, because it's kind of like that with computers where everybody's using it, but they don't actually know how it's programmed or how it's processing, or what is actually going on. And this becomes that smoking mirror, right? Because it's you think you're looking at the real mirror that's reflecting whatever objective reality coming up. I mean, a lot of the problem too is these people, I guess, marketing it and even drinking their own Kool-Aid, thinking that the large language model can determine truth without any value of human bias, insight. They want to be no, look it, this is just what the numbers say, and you're just no, that's not how it works.
It's not how it works at all. Is the thing, and they do it, and it's everybody that does it all.
And you know what's even interesting? When you dig down to it, the large language model is even running it off of a language that we don't really understand. It's some kind of language, logic, and statistical analysis, but it's not a pure math language, and it's not a pure word logic language. It's somewhere in between, and no one really understands what it is, but they talk it amongst themselves. And they also think about it before they spit out the output, which is also another weird thing. So we may never know actually what is the real answer. It's kind of funny to think about.
It's beyond our
yeah.